Hello and welcome to the first edition of Fireside Chats with TJ Hemmon. As many of you may know, I haven't graduated college yet, which makes me completely qualified to talk about this topic. The question of the week, the question on everyone's minds, is Cars better than Lilo and Stitch? Short answer, no, absolutely not. And I have a couple of reasons why. Number one, first I'm going to defend Lilo and Stitch from the people who have gotten it into their heads that it's not some kind of cinematic classic, that it could be beaten out by Pixar's least well-performing film. The family dynamic in Lilo and Stitch is really ahead of its time. You got Nani and Lilo, and Nani is Lilo's older sister who is taking care of a household without any parents, and she's got this social services problem closing in on her. And these two characters do not get along, but they're in a pretty interesting situation, and I think it's a situation that a lot of small households can find themselves in. You know, in a world where parents aren't present, that the older sister takes on a lot of responsibility, and this girl works. Okay, she does two jobs, right, full time, busting her ass to provide for Lilo, who at the beginning of the movie is like an absolute brat. I won't deny that. But I think the best part about Lilo and Stitch is that all if not most of the main characters go through like a complete change, and that just first of all makes for really interesting storytelling. Lilo and Nani start off, at complete, opposite ends, but they're, of course bonded because they're family, and that's sort of a through line to any argument that, like, at the end of the day, family is the most important thing. And Lilo sort of discovers through Stitch she can become a better sister, and she can become, less abrasive. And Nani sort of finds some middle ground with Lilo as well. And that's just a lot of fun to watch, and it's a really heartwarming story. Stitch also goes from a complete maniac to being like a really wonderfully rounded character who is sweet and kind, and everyone has like a really interesting subplot, right? Stitch is sort of like this chaotic loose cannon that sort of like realizes the impact of his actions, and he does a lot of that without saying anything. Like, he doesn't have to describe it to the audience. I think he sort of gets into detail when he realizes, like, Ohana means family, and I forgot the complete line, but
Ohana means family. Family means nobody gets left behind. But if you want to leave, you can. I'll remember you, though.
Most of the characters in Lilo and Stitch go through complete changes, and that's why it's a more memorable story. It's why it's a better story. Now, moving on to Cars.
Tractors is so dumb.
Okay. First of all, Cars is arguably the least inventive movie that Pixar has put out. Okay? There's this, like, meme that Pixar makes movies about things that have feelings, right? What if toys had feelings? What if monsters had feelings? What if robots had feelings? What if old people had feelings? The thing about Cars is, like, what if Cars had feelings? First of all, it's already been done. You remember the Chevron ads. I remember the Chevron ads. And the Chevron ads, the ads, right, are better than Cars already. So the argument of, like, who changes in Cars? Clearly, Lightning McQueen goes from being a selfish person to being a selfless person, but that's, like, not... I mean, you could find that in hundreds of movies, and it's, like, cool. That's a fine story. It's just serviceable. There's nothing special about it. He gets to Radiator Springs, and, like, the only characters of importance in Radiator Springs are the girlfriend, the old car, and Mater, and Mater is just a joke, right? He's just this, like, static character, and he's not even entertaining.
I swear.
The other thing is, like, looking back on Cars, all these, like, strange, like, world-building problems come up in Cars. So, like, all the cars are sentient, right? And even, like, the cows are cars, right? And Mater goes out one evening and like starts tipping these people. He basically commits a hate crime. Okay, like there's let's not dance around the elephant in the room. Mater commits a hate crime.
Just sneak up in front of them and then honk, and they do the rest.
And that makes him an unredeemable character in my eyes. And the other thing about Mater is looking back on him and sort of thinking about like the demographic that he comes from, the place that he comes from. I am like 100% convinced that if Mater were here today, or were here in 2016, if Mater were here in 2016, he would have voted for Trump. Radiator Springs is not an interesting location. Radiator Springs is like a template for like a small-time American town that like could be replicated like 50 or hundreds of times over anywhere in like the Bible Belt or like middle of America. In comparison to the setting of Lilo and Stitch, Hawaii is Hawaii. There is no other place like Hawaii, and it's got this like culture to it that is just a lot more interesting to watch on screen because it doesn't often get represented. And there's also like a great deal of like history that gets poured into the setting of Lilo and Stitch as well. The characters are in love with Elvis, and I think that like brings some like cultural context. Fuck. Dude. Whew, I was getting too sweaty in that. Yeah, Radiator Springs is not an interesting place. The main problem with Radiator Springs in the film is like that this highway gets built and like they don't get commerce to come to them, which to me reinforces the idea that there is someone to blame for Radiator Springs' problem. And that also adds to the point of why I think Mater would have voted for Trump. Yeah, Lightning McQueen pushes the one guy over the finish line, you know, the guy who like should win. And shit, man, you can see that in, like, any other movie. Like, some character who is, like, totally selfish, like, becomes selfless, and it's, like, it's not interesting. The only reason that Cars was ever popular was because it sold the most merchandise out of any Pixar film. Yeah, it doesn't have an interesting setting, doesn't have very interesting characters. They're all, like, even the characters that, like, are quote-unquote, like, interesting, like that you could argue like, oh, like the old car, he's got like this history and all that. They're archetypes. They aren't real characters. They're all one note, right? They don't have like any like massive change that happens. Like the old car learns to like kind of enjoy Lightning McQueen's company, but like none of these characters like really change, and that's my problem with the movie. That's not very good storytelling. It's not very economical storytelling. Lilo and Stitch just has a better setting, better characters, better art too. The art of Lilo and Stitch I think is timeless. The 2D it's always going to look better than like 3D that was like really good in its day. It's not to say that like Cars is unwatchable in its like animated quality, but like looking back on Cars, that animation has definitely aged, and not in a good way. Pixar, like I'm not really going to give them shit for like movies that have CGI graphics that like don't look as good anymore. Like you could look back at Toy Story 1, and I think Toy Story 1 is kind of hard to watch because the animation is pretty old at this point. But what Toy Story 1 has over Cars is a really, really good story, and that sort of like carries over any sort of like time-based like imperfection that could be caused. You could watch Lilo and Stitch 50 years from now, and it would still be just as good as it is right now, because that animation is always going to look good. So yeah, Mater commits a hate crime. Mater probably would have voted for Trump, and I thought like maybe Mater would be the only character that like bothered me. And like I remember that Lightning McQueen was an asshole, but I didn't think that Lightning McQueen was a racist, and here is a case example.
Sapo! Don't need any help. I work solo mio. Fine. Prefiero, eh? No pit stopo. Comprendo? Okay.
You like a guy like that? How can you like a guy that talks to other people like that? If this were like live action, I think that everyone in the audience would have been like, that guy was a complete douchebag. Also, another reason to love Lilo and Stitch, while not in the first movie, he is part of the Lilo and Stitch experience. And maybe you've forgotten about this little guy, but I did not forget. It's impossible to forget about this god, and I would like to share him with you again in case your memory has slipped.
That rocked the island this morning.
625, turn that thing off! I'm trying to get this communication relay back online, and you're not helping!
Ah, what's the matter? Can't handle plugging in wires by yourself? At least I'll be ready in case of a sandwich shortage.
Shortage? Boop, 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 boop.
Newsflash from the Crab Nebula space whale. There was a quake today. I'm not taking chances. I'm stocking up.
Enter your